Coming up on the show, could a pro hockey team make it back to Metro Atlanta? We're going to examine the process and how a community can make that dream come alive. Plus, we're going to analyze the importance of mental health when it comes to the presidency and how tariffs are playing a role in how stores are stocking the shelves with baby products since so much of it comes from China. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to give their professional take on all the things that they know, and they know a lot. We also try to have a little bit of fun as well. Let's start off with this. We start with the momentum of bringing a national, or at least bringing the National Hockey League back to Metro Atlanta. Last week, the city of Alpharetta greenlit a $150,000 study to determine if an arena could be built in the area of North Point Mall. Now, the study is expected to take 5 to 6 months to complete, so we'll wait to hear about that. Also competing with that is a proposal in Forsyth County for a mega mixed-use arena called The Gathering. Earlier this month, Vernon Cruz, the man behind the proposal for the city of Cumming, told 11Alive's Maria Martin the next step is to meet with Commissioner Gary Bettman, and last week the commissioner touched on how different the Metro is positioned this time around for a third team in our area.
I think it's a different place than when the Flames and the Thrashers left in terms of how big the city is, how robust it is, the sporting interest. I don't think the prior two visits have any bearing on whether or not we would go back if all the other pieces that I referred to were put together.
Could it happen? Could it happen? Well, here to give us more perspective on it is Andrea Worthy. She's the Economic Development Director for the City of Smyrna. She previously had the same position in Sandy Springs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, bringing a pro hockey team to the suburbs is an easy thing, right? Talk about why some communities are trying to shoot so high at this.
I think, frankly, because of the potential impact. You see examples of this all around Metro Atlanta, right here in the Smyrna's backyard, the Brave Stadium. You know, that's been a huge win. So I think a lot of communities are very interested in bringing that type of product to their community. We
understand that Alpharetta now is at the feasibility stage, right? Trying to get this done. Talk to us about what that means. What does all that entail?
What that means, frankly, is a third party that comes in and interviews and tries to figure out what the demand is for the new product. I mean, frankly, a professional hockey team is only going to use the facility for 40 to 41 home games per year. So that leaves a lot of extra space to figure out if there's demand for shows, concerts, community events. So this is really a way for the community to really get a good handle on what type of demand there is, what type of revenue could be generated, and if any type of public subsidy may be needed to make this work.
So much focus on the hockey team itself, but you mentioned all these other things, the concert venue. Wouldn't you highlight that more, having had 2 professional hockey teams in Atlanta before that didn't quite make it? Why so much the hype on the hockey part?
Oh, that's because sports are sexy. Frankly, that's the issue there. Everybody wants a great sports team. And hey, Metro Atlanta would love to have another professional level sports team here. But to your point, those other things are the things that are really going to help pay for the arena, generate a lot of hotel room nights and people coming to the area. So that's why it's so important to get a good handle on what the demand is for those items.
So far, we got 2 areas vying for position with this, right? We talked about it being sexy. 2 people want it. What's the fight like, and who could potentially come out on top?
Oh, that's a hard speculation. It really sort of depends on exactly what the NHL is looking for in their product. It may be a situation with like the Braves here, where they have a development company and they may want to, own all the property themselves or something along those lines. So I can't really speculate to that. But I will say that the city of Alpharetta is within Fulton County, which is technically served by MARTA. So just looking at that perspective, it could seem to me that Alpharetta might have a slight leg up in that arena.
You're in Smyrna, right, which is very close to where Truist Park is now. Are there any lessons you learned when the Braves came up to your way?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's completely changed the entire marketplace here. The halo effect from that project has been huge. And there was a lot of controversy, if you remember at the time, about the public subsidy that was involved in that project. But for the past 2 years, the Braves have come back before the county commission and shown that they are actually generating more revenue property tax revenue and sales tax revenue than the actual debt obligation. So it's been a fiscal plus for Cobb County, but also just in terms of the halo effect, we see it here in Smyrna. We're across the street from the stadium. The demand from developers looking to be involved in a project right next to the Battery is huge.
Do you think it's possible that another city may try to get in on this fight for a hockey team?
Maybe, but it kind of makes sense from what I've seen from the demand from NHL demand to be in the northern suburbs. Again, that's one of the reasons the Braves, when they relocated from the city of Atlanta, they look to the northern suburbs. That's where their market is, and I think that's true for the hockey fans as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, first we had the Flames, then the Thrashers. Any ideas on what the name of the team might be?
No, but my husband is originally from Chicago, and he is dying for a hockey team to be back here in the metro Atlanta area. So I think there'll be lots of demand, but I have no idea what a great name would be.
You're absolutely right when it comes to sports teams, and that would be the sexier side of it, but certainly the concerts would be huge. I did get a chance briefly when I first got here to see the Thrashers, so I think it would be cool to see.
I think it would be cool as well. I think it would be very cool. Count me in for being one of the first people to line up in whatever location it could land.
There you go. All right, maybe Smyrna. No, I'm kidding. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at our 7-day outlook for today, folks, and it is going to be hot. Yeah, you need a hockey team. You need an arena with some ice in it, right, to go and watch a game. You're looking at 88 degrees for the afternoon high temperature today, but we'll see a mix of sun and clouds right on through the afternoon. How about 90 for a high temperature on Friday? Same scenario. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. No rain coming out of those clouds until we get to Saturday. That's when a front is going to move through the area. That will provide enough lift that we'll see a couple thunderstorms around, a few of which could be strong to severe, mainly up into our far northwestern counties as those thunderstorms move into the area just ahead of the front. They will be weakening as they make their way down toward the metro area. So now we're only giving it a 30% chance, something that we'll be watching for, and we'll update you, of course, as we go along. Where does that front wind up? That's going to be the question. We're going to keep the chance for the rain in the forecast for Sunday and into early Monday. Should be clearing out by Monday afternoon. 90 again on Tuesday under mostly sunny skies, and then another chance for rain comes back to us as we head into Wednesday. 88 degrees will be our afternoon high temperature. Hey, don't go anywhere. We got much more show for you coming up right after this. And don't forget, right here on 11Alive Plus, you can get 24 hours, 7 days a week of weather. Yes, and let you know how it's going to impact you right here on 11Alive Plus, the Weather Impact 24/7, streaming live weather all the time. Welcome back to the show. After signing deals in Qatar, President Trump will be making his last stop on his trip in the Middle East. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who has been covering politics for years now. And Alice, a short time ago, the president addressed U.S. troops at an air base in Qatar. What was his message there?
Good morning, Chesley. Yeah, he talked about American military might. He covered a lot of ground, actually, touching on a lot of subjects, but really he was there to kind of pump out American troops at what is, in fact, the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. It's positioned there in Qatar, which points to just the strategic importance of that country militarily as well as economically, as has been the focus of a large part of this trip. But yeah, the president talked about a number of issues, including talking about wanting to do more to commemorate the end of World War II. And he said that he'd been speaking with a lot of European leaders who had been going through World War II commemorations for the end of that war throughout the month, and that he wants to see something similar in the U.S. He said he wants to designate 2 days as national holidays in the U.S. to mark the occasion, because he says America deserves a lot of credit for having ended that war. To hear it from him, in fact, most of the credit is kind of the message that he was giving out to American troops today.
Gotcha. Before he left there, the president announced the sale of Boeing jets into that nation while accepting a luxury plane as a gift. How has the White House justified this?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this throughout the week, this idea that Qatar has offered to gift a luxury jet to the Defense Department that would then be used as a temporary Air Force One for President Trump, and at the end of his term would be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library. That's the part that's a little extra sticky here. It's one thing to offer a gift from one government to another one, but this one seems to land at the end in the possession of President Trump so that he could use it after he leaves office. But the White House has been adamant, and President Trump has been adamant, that there's nothing wrong with accepting this kind of gift, that this kind of thing has happened before, and that the president has said he thinks it would be stupid to turn this down. It comes in the context of the fact that Boeing is very behind in delivering on an updated Air Force One that President Trump's been waiting on. It has to be said, though, even if this gift did come through and it's still not finalized from Qatar, there would have to be a lot of retrofitting done to the plane in order for it to be safe to be an Air Force One, and many people say that would take longer than the end of the president's term even to get that going. So there's that question. But you mentioned also this idea that Qatar agreed to the largest ever sale of Boeing jets, 210 roughly jets that they're going to sell, or that the U.S., that Boeing in the U.S. is going to sell to Qatar, and that's the kind of investment President Trump has been touting throughout this trip.
All right. Also on the White House radar is Iran. What are we hearing about this morning about that nation's nuclear program?
Yeah, so President Trump has made another key focus of this trip, pressing Iran to give up its nuclear ambitions and to curb its nuclear program. And he said this morning, speaking about this, that he thought that the U.S. was actually very close to being able to negotiate directly with Iran in order to make that happen. President Trump had pulled the U.S. out of the last nuclear deal that was negotiated under President Obama, former President Obama. He didn't like the terms of that, but now he's looking for a new deal that would stop Iran from heading toward a nuclear weapon, because it appears that they are getting dangerously close. And NBC's Richard Engel did hear directly from a top advisor to Iran's supreme leader, who said that Iran is ready to agree to never having a nuclear weapon and to giving up its large stockpiles of material that would potentially lead to a nuclear weapon if the U.S. agrees to drop all of the crippling economic sanctions that have been long in place against that country. Chesley.
Gotcha. All right, Alice, thanks so much for your insight today. Really appreciate it. Have a great day. All right, a new book suggesting aides for former President Joe Biden debating putting him in a wheelchair if he won a second term. The book, titled Original Sin, is co-authored by CNN's Jake Tapper. The book says Biden's physical deterioration had become severe in the second half of his presidency, most apparent in his walk. It also reports that the former president began forgetting names, staring blankly at people he'd known for more than a decade, and became disoriented and incoherent when he was fatigued. CNN has attributed a statement from a Biden spokesman saying, quote, "We continue to await anything that shows where Joe Biden had to make a presidential decision or national security was threatened or where he was unable to do his job. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. He was very effective as a president." Joining us now for more insight on this is Andrea Gillespie. She's associate professor of political science at Emory University. Andrea, welcome back to the show, first of all.
Thanks for having me.
All right. How have past administrations addressed or failed to address the mental health challenges of presidents?
Well, you know, it's really hard looking back in history to find an example that's entirely like this one. We could go back to the Reagan administration where there were moments of forgetfulness. I think I remember distinctly, like during the Iran-Contra affair, and then people kind of Monday morning quarterbacked his situation when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 6 years after leaving the White House. But if you actually kind of go back and look over the record, his doctors were giving him a clean bill of health, and there weren't a whole lot of, sort of public challenges to his mental acuity. So that's probably the closest kind of thing that we can say that would be analogous to the situation that we're talking about here. We can talk about other presidents having been incapacitated in the past. So in particular, Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke during his second term as presidency. And so for a lot of his final 2 years in office, he really was incapacitated. And his wife actually hid his situation, kept him in bed and, made sure that she was the gatekeeper of all presidential information. So a lot of historians actually look at Edith Wilson as being an activist first lady who actually did take on, a policy-making role in an informal way. We really haven't had to deal with this situation. The 25th Amendment of the Constitution does have a clause after the succession plan that's outlined in Section 1, which says that the vice president takes over if the president is dead or can't perform his duties as president, that says that a majority of the cabinet would have to get together and tell Congress, hey, the president, is incapacitated and cannot serve in this office. And then that way you can remove the president from power. And then have the vice president take over. So aside from the constitutional provision that is there to provide for a situation like this, we've never seen it activated.
Wow. So what ways do you think mental health of a president affects the moral and the well-being of our nation?
Well, I mean, we can look at the 2024 election cycle where there were lots of rumors circulating about Joe Biden's mental acuity. And this is something that Donald Trump certainly used to his advantage in terms of attacking the administration. And you can see the evidence of that in that debate on CNN last June that, many proved was disastrous and that a lot of people say, was used to push Joe Biden out of the race as an example of people stepping up and telling President Biden that he could no longer run for office. So often this has to be done kind of informally, kind of in the public shaming type of scenario than necessarily executing Article 25 to remove a president from power. I think if you look at the excitement around Kamala Harris's sort of announcement that she was, going to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee is evidence of the fact that there were a lot of Democratic voters who were opposed to Joe Biden because they were concerned about whether or not he was fit to serve a second term in office. And so part of that initial bump, I think, was a reaction to having somebody who was younger and whose mental acuity was not in question.
Do you think, in lieu of this book coming out, what we're learning now will change that policy going forward, or do you think we keep what we have in place?
It's very likely that we're going to continue to use the 25th Amendment as a stopgap. It's doubtful that we'd see it be used in our lifetime. There are people who have talked about using these tests. Nikki Haley suggested it on the campaign trail when she was running against Donald Trump. But I think that there is going to be a hesitancy to use it. First of all, you don't want to engage in ageism. Just not every 80-year-old, is mentally incapacitated from being able to run for office. I think it also raises questions, not just about mental acuity, but about mental stability. And I think that that's actually also dicey and political. And people will say that charges about somebody being mentally unstable are actually politically motivated and not necessarily grounded in science and in any actuality. The tough thing about mental acuity is that the tests that doctors sometimes use sometimes might not pick up on the things that people in the media may want them to pick up on until years later. And so it doesn't mean that there wasn't a decline, as was the case with President Reagan. It's just that the tests really were not picking this up in a way that's diagnosable. And I'll leave that to the medical professionals to be able to kind of delineate, when for sure that somebody is in a state of mental decline.
Got you on that. Professor Gillespie, really appreciate your insight. As always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Plenty more stories for you, folks, coming up after the break. You're watching 11Alive Plus. This is The Take. All right, getting ready for a new baby is emotional, it's exciting, and expensive. And lately, some parents are seeing a surprising surge in prices for essential baby gear. So what's behind the spike, and could it be putting safety at risk? Joining us now is 11Alive consumer investigative reporter Liza Lucas. You've been talking with experts behind some of these numbers and the growing concern, right?
That is exactly right, Chesley. I know we have to rewind several years. Your kids are grown, but if you are expecting a baby or shopping for baby gear, you have probably noticed prices for essentials like car seats and strollers are way up in some cases. And yes, tariffs tie into the hike. It's estimated that 90%, Chesley, of baby products are made in Asia, most of them in China. So when tariffs hit that 145% threshold on Chinese imports, the impact on families happened really fast.
Wow. Yeah. So what kind of prices are we talking about here, Liza? Is it really that expensive?
Well, we really are seeing a range here, and big companies have been trying to warn shoppers this was coming. There are a lot of posts on various company pages about it, but in the past few weeks, 11Alive has seen prices jump $20 on some items, and on others, we've seen hundreds of dollars when we talk about a hike. And remember, car seats and strollers, they are already considered big ticket items. So with this tax tacked on, it is significant.
Wow. So you spoke with both local business owners and for nonprofits also about this increase. How are they finding that families are coping with these price increases?
Well, both say that this has put a lot of stress on families. Remember, this is supposed to be a really happy time, an expectant time, excitement, but instead there's financial strain here. And businesses in particular, they are having a hard time planning. In fact, I spoke with the owner of Happy Mango Boutique. You just saw her there. She says some of her best-selling items just aren't in stock. She says some companies aren't able to afford that extra cost of bringing items into the U.S. with the tariff added.
All right. There's also been talks about trade negotiations this week and
Yes.
That temporary 90-day tariff pause. Did that provide some relief?
Well, that's a big question, and I think everyone is hopeful that prices could come back down. Again, we're talking about a 90-day pause here, so a lot of uncertainty. But the products that already came in under those heavy tariffs, they're still on the shelves at those high prices, and experts warn this whole situation could push parents to find less expensive options that may be riskier. We're talking about unsafe, used, or knockoff car seats. Take a listen.
With safety items, it really becomes problematic because, as we know, if you need something and you can't get it, you're going to find a way to get it. So that leads to people buying used car seats, which are not always safe. And unfortunately, there is a plethora of fake car seats on the market. So they're going now to get something that's cheaper because, again, the car seat that was on their registry that's $349 is now $599 and no longer affordable.
Now, I reached out to a trade group who's been fighting for an exemption to these tariffs. It did note the reporting from last week that the White House could be considering excluding baby gear from the tariffs, but as of now, there's no official exemption in place. Take a look at their statement in part. The Juvenile Products Manufacturer Association tells me that the drop in the tariff rate for Chinese imports as of right now is a move in the right direction, but the group is continuing to ask for a broad exemption of baby and children's products from tariffs. The group basically says that would ensure these essential products, stay affordable and in stock.
All right, Larsa, thanks a lot. You know, you mentioned I have grown kids, but I do know a lot of people who have baby showers I got to buy gifts for. So
do it early. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stock up right now. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Liza has a closer look at this story tonight at 6 p.m. and 11 o'clock, and you can watch her investigation right here on 11Alive Plus. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm back with my final take right after this. All right, let's take a look at that weather forecast once again. It's going to be HOT, folks. Hot, 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 especially for this time of year. We should be around 80, 81 degrees. We'll be at 88 for a high temperature today. And if we get a few more breaks in those clouds, it could be higher. Tomorrow, we're looking at the same mix of sun and clouds, near 90 for your high temperature. The record for tomorrow, by the way, is 91. So we could get close to tie that, maybe even break it, right? Got some rain coming back to us as we head into the weekend. Saturday and Sunday right now, a 30% chance for showers. Looks like the morning on Saturday, looks like through the day on Sunday. It really depends on where that front stalls that's going to move into our area will determine what we see on Sunday. But either way, more of a cooler day, if you will, looking at 85 degrees for the high temperature. Then back to the heat again as we head into next week. By Tuesday, you're looking at mostly sunny skies and 90 for the high, 88 on Wednesday with a return for showers. Before we go, my final take. Well, we kind of knew this was going to happen, right? AI is taking over our lives, making simple those menial tasks. That's what it was intended for us to do. But now it's starting to move into our dating lives, folks. Increasingly, people are finding it difficult to come up with the right words to say. And so they're turning to apps like ChatGPT to create opening lines and flirting phrases to make an impression. Although this may be helpful to break the ice or make you stand out in a crowded online dating scene, it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable practice. I wouldn't get used to this, folks. At some point, you're going to have to stand face to face before your date. And unless you plan to have a face-to-face conversation through your phone, it's not going to help you out. In other words, at some point, you got to get real in your relationship, folks. It's an app, right? It may be intelligent, but it's certainly artificial. People can't accept the real you. Maybe they're not worth your time. That's all we have for you today. Make it a great day, folks, and try to encourage someone to stay real.